Well, one day you're three, the next day you're one. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily, coming to you from our studios here in Abuja and, of course, Lagos. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Yes, one day you're one and the other you're two. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
Looks like I'm the puppet here right now. It's the last day in the month of August 31. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde. Well, part of the things that we always try to do on this program every single day of the week is to call attention to things that are important, be they at macro level or micro level. And one of those issues happened in Lagos not too long ago. And so it's very, very... A number of people have seen the video. It's even on social media already. If you haven't, take a look.
See my car where towing van. Government towing van can't steal this morning. They come. See, look, come. See as they now I knew Bori, I never hear for history of this life when I come out towing van can't steal car by 2:10. My God, say make my people. My God, say make my people wake up with a shout. See pole, see electric pole. Na pillar of God.
See, not be electric pole. Stop your motor.
Na pillar of God.
Where this man they serve.
Oh my God.
Where this man.
Living God.
God can use anything. Not be this one. Now God.
You see what thing happen? You see as God love me. I beg you carry and follow me. Make you see. Don't eat cow. Can't see. Can't see. They even get juju there. See. They even put juju inside the car.
Thank God.
See. Government towing van. They can't make it show you. See. See, yes. See, last man people. Oh yeah, follow. Follow, they come. They come, make them see. Towing van for that matter.
Well, it went on and on about almost 2 minutes of that video showing that this particular vehicle came to their locality to attempt, Shomolu area of Lagos to be precise, with an intention to steal that particular vehicle, literally tow it away in the middle of the night. And for whatever reason, as you could see, they were unable to do it. When attention was called, when an alarm was raised, a good number, the people literally abandoned everything and fled. Of course, with the attention brought to it, the Lagos State Traffic Management Agency came out. The Traffic Management Authority, made a report and said, look, this isn't what it looks like. In fact, they said in a statement that the driver of the towing vehicle was not an official of the Lagos State Traffic Management Authority. And they want to inform the general public, particularly the motoring public, that the individual in question has been apprehended and currently at Pedro Police Station for further investigation. Now, is it in the practice of LASMA to have such agents with that kind of, identity on a vehicle? Well, the answer is yes, because according to LASMA, they have a specific kind of identity for people whom they engage to tow vehicles that contravene traffic laws in Lagos. And they have a completely different kind of uniform, and they have their own completely different badge and all of those things. They have a specific sticker for that particular kind of towing vehicle. Well, there are so many questions, for which reason we invited the LASMA PRO, Mr. Adebayo Taufik, but unfortunately he's unable to make it today. According to him, he has some other things. But the statement that LASMA put out is a little troubling and begs for a lot more questions. To say at this time that this particular LASMA towing van operator is fake, has a fake identity card and fake LASMA tow franchise sticker, begs a lot of questions, Bukola.
Indeed, Ayo. And one of, first few questions that we should begin to ask LASMA in their absence is, how did this individual secure or gain access to this towing vehicle that is bearing the sticker of, the authority? You can't wonder too far how this vehicle will gain access into a residential area. Of course, it's bearing the sticker of LASMA. That's number one. Number two, if LASMA works with private individuals to do this, do they get, do they carry out their due diligence, to know the individuals that they're working with? Do they have all of their details? How come they do not have the detail of this particular individual who got access to this vehicle and used it to perpetrate, such act? And then again, in the past, we've had, at least I know of a particular private company that was working with the local government authorities at that time to tow vehicles that have been, abandoned on the highways for some time. But that company ran into, problems not once, not twice, many times, because the owners of such vehicles will come and eventually, try to reclaim their vehicle, and then it would lead to a lot of police case and all of that. That's one. Now, if you look at the long shot of that residential area, you would find that there are quite a number of vehicles parked on the road. Now, has LASMA begun to work in residential areas to the effect that they tow vehicles that are, put on parked position? And that's a major problem, particularly in residential areas. There are not enough parking spaces inside premises, owned by landlords. They do not provide enough parking spaces. They rent out a lot of, the parking spaces, again, as shops. They build shops outside those residential areas. So that's another kettle of fish, entirely. But LASMA should educate Nigerians to let them know if they've begun to do such work, such that they can begin to seek alternative ways of parking their vehicles so that they don't run into trouble. But that's absolutely no excuse, for what has happened here. There's a lot more questions that LASMA needs to answer, some of which we've put out, with this particular video.
Incidentally, just last week I was scouring the internet. I had reason to go to the VIO office, and I was scouring the all of the internet, looking for a list of traffic offenses in Lagos. I don't know when it became an offense to park your vehicle in front of your house in a densely populated area. They have a local government system, they have a state government, they have a senator, they have a House of Representatives member, they have a councillor. So I'm wondering how all of that is. But it still begs a lot of question, and we're expecting that LASMA is still going to come out.
In congested areas, parking in front of the road or on the street, also creates traffic situations, where sometimes you have to come out and move your car such that another car can gain access. But I can totally relate.
You asked a valid question. The question you asked is it now in place for them to go to residential areas?
Yes.
To move their vehicle? And there is a community development association. What conversations are they having with them? We don't have to use the sledgehammer all the time, do we?
Yeah, LASMA needs to answer that question. But I can totally relate with this woman. I've, had my car parked in front of the house before on a street like this, and it was stolen from parked position. So that also throws up another problem, another question about security in neighborhoods. But this particular towing vehicle was carrying the sticker of a Lagos State government agency, so nobody would question, even if they had, neighborhood watch, effective neighborhood watch, nobody would question the driver of this vehicle. They would just gain access, and that car would have been stolen.
In the middle of the night?
In the middle of the night, yes.
It's okay.
Maokwe.
What's happening in my Lagos? Well, now it's my Lagos. I don't want to say your Lagos, because the truth is, it is all our Lagos, the commercial nerve center of this country, which was once the capital of this country. When you hear these kinds of stories, they border on the reputation of state agencies, and they do have a duty to come out and clear the air, not just to release statements, because videos and audios travel much faster than anything printed. They know that this woman, had she written it on her Facebook wall or something, it might not have gotten the kind of traction that it has received. She did a video alleging with proof, with evidence. Look, this is a vehicle, a towing vehicle bearing the sticker of, a state agency, a state traffic agency, trying to remove my car from where I parked it in the middle of the night. That's a very scandalous story. So I hope that, LASMA sees this as a reputational issue, something that has the capacity to damage the reputation of their personnel, cast all doubts on even the yeoman's work that lots of them are doing as a result of, what might have happened. And even though they've said, look, that's not our person, he's been arrested and all of that, it's still a statement. They have to come out and debunk in very clear terms that, this is not from us, this is not who we are, this is not what we do. And explain to the public, because when there are gaps, then people, all sort of things will begin to enter the cracks in those gaps. So they need to make sure that all gaps are closed. They need to ensure that the public is very much aware and they have the confidence in their own traffic management authority. Explain to the public what your traffic management authority looks like, the uniforms that they wear, the things to look out for. And the questions to ask, perhaps, when they are faced with situations like this. It's so sad because anybody can, and that's why they always tell people to be careful. If you drop your ID card or if you lose your ID card, let somebody know. If you, anything can happen. People can be impersonated. But when an entire agency is impersonated, they need to be, crying from the rooftops that this is exactly what has happened. I'm hoping that we will get not just a statement, because we've seen one, but even an explanation of what they hear from what has happened, and also an education of the public on how to identify authentic vehicles or authentic towing vehicles that belong to LASMA, not impersonators, and the procedure. I don't imagine that if LASMA wants to tow my car, if I'm in the breach, even if I parked on a road in a community or in a residential area, I don't imagine that they will just come and tow it away. I imagine that there will be a process, maybe an attempt to inform me, of what I have done, and before they take my vehicle away. So it's a very, very disturbing situation. We do not expect to see this type of thing in a place like Lagos. It is our most urban center, very cosmopolitan, very innovative, very dynamic. I'm hoping that, the officials there would not take any attempt to dent their image lightly at all. But I think you guys have already put the icing on it. We might as well just then take a look at what the dailies are saying this morning. Do they have that story as well? Doesn't appear so, but we're going to be starting with the leadership newspapers this morning, and what they start with this morning is Gabon coup. The coup in Gabon. Very interesting how they couch the story. Fear grips African leaders as continent descends into dictatorship. That's what they have on the front page. Tinubu, world leaders condemn coup. Gabon military names General Brice Nguema transition leader. The story is right there on the front page, and people have been asking, what do you need to know about this general who has now taken over? He says he's taken over in a interim position. Also, there's also word out there that he is the cousin of Ali Bongo, and that this school has external influences in it, and it perhaps is to check, what could have been a descent into chaos, or the installation of somebody else who might not exactly be bowing to external influences. So sometimes you've got to look beyond the finger, you're saying. Page 4 is where you'll see details. Fear grips African leaders as continent descends into dictatorship. Looks like a flu, the flu of the coup. is blowing across the African continent. Shall we ask, which country is next? Is that what we should ask? Or will it end? The question. You also see right there the top 10 longest serving African presidents. I would have called them sit-tight presidents that would not be removed. You see right there the president of Equatorial Guinea, president of Cameroon, president of Congo, and then you also see that of Uganda. All on the front page this morning, focusing on Africa. What poem again? Africa, my Africa. This you with your back bang? Let's not get poetic. Well, let's take a look at all the stories you see right there on top of the nameplate. You see there, Tinubu mourns as Nigeria's national flag designer Akinkunmi dies at 87. Page 6 is where you find details of that particular story. Manufacturers suffer 30% decrease in sales as Naira crisis lingers, so also something on the economy there. I'm still a PDP member in APC government, says Wike. The story is on page 6. If you missed that interview, by the way, it's on our website, channelstelevision.com. It was exclusive interview granted to our correspondent, our political editor, Okimbalo. Page 6 is where you'll find details. A number of other stories right there. Shatima demands review of feeding arrangements is on page 6. And we'll have to leave it there for leadership news.
And turn next to the Guardian newspaper, which has, a rich spread this morning. I'm a bit spoiled for choice. Well, I'll start with the big one. Democracy in shambles. That's the way the Guardian chooses to start. African governments risk financial blockade. FDI squeeze over rising coups. And it has a colorful picture of the map of Africa on the front page this morning, with the countries where coups have happened, highlighted in a black spread of the west to Central African region. And then you have there, from west to east rather, you have Guinea, you have Burkina Faso, you have Mali, Niger, Chad, you have Sudan, and you have, right under there, you have Gabon, the latest country, to join, the countries where the wind of coup has blown through. That's it for the big story. If you are interested, you just might want to turn to page 6 of The Guardian, to get the details of the implications of, risking foreign direct investment. Let's go above the nameplate to see, right above the big story rather, how traditional medicine can fund Nigeria's yearly budget.
I'm very interested in that.
Very, very interested, Ayo. It just takes us back down memory lane of Nigerians who have put forward proposals, with claims to having the ability, of their products to cure some public health, crisis that we've experienced in the past. We've had HIV and AIDS. We've had, the COVID pandemic. I had cause to interview quite a number of traditional medicine practitioners, and they had claims. While you're not going to buy into all of those claims, but how many of those proposals were scrutinized? How many of them were subjected to tests such that we could, verify their claims and, perhaps be that country that would, revolutionize or be able to produce, a cure, a permanent cure to a public health emergency? Well,
to be fair, I know that agencies of government are giving attention to it. I know that the DG of NAFDAC is personally interested. A number of times we've spoken about it. I also know that the World Health Organization, I think, recently held a conference on traditional medicine. Professionally, it's called phytomedicine. And I think a lot of them are saying quite a number of things. I mean, phytomedicine works quite well in China, and I think in some of these Asian countries. So why not in Africa? There are some people you would know who would rather take, phytomedicine than go to the pharmacy to get anything for malaria and stuff like that. So But it will be very interesting. That's going to make a very, very wonderful read this morning. How traditional medicine can fund Nigeria's yearly budget. If phytomedicine can fund Nigeria's yearly budget, let's use others to do some other important things for us, in the country. But it's going to make a very, very interesting read.
Absolutely. But beyond the conferences, it's important for Nigerian authorities themselves to walk the talk rather than stay.
We have quite a number of research institutes. NIMA, for one, is a medical research institute in the country, and quite a few of them also. I was very, very much interested, so I paid attention to a lot of those things that they have been doing along that line. The question then is, how soon? It was during the COVID-19 that when we asked the DG of NAFDAC, what's the quick win that we can have to deal with this COVID-19? And she said excitedly, she said the low-hanging fruit was Chimilin that asked the question. The low-hanging fruit we had was herbal medicine. I was excited.
So where are the low-hanging fruits?
But
where are the results?
She also said something, that the distance between acceptance of phytomedicine and between now and accepting phytomedicine standards is research. That's why the place of NIMA is very important.
I in fact recall, Ayo, that under the former leadership, the Ministry of Science and Technology had in fact, organized a particular meeting with proponents, those who claim to have one form of cure or the other. But where are we today? Where are the outcomes?
We're in the studio.
We're in the studio. We are in the studio this morning, so let's leave you there for the Guardian newspaper.
And switch to Daily Times newspaper, paying attention to something completely different this morning. And it's talking about NHF probe. Yes. Find out the details. NHF is National Housing Fund, I think. And it says this: over 267 billion naira workers' unremitted contributions missing. Missing is in parentheses. And you'll find out quite interesting what the issues are. Angry Reps Committee summons 54 CEOs, orders them to come personally. The figure is for 2019 alone. 2020 to 2023 is still outstanding. Dire consequence awaits any defaulting CEO. Workers' unremitted contributions. We're waiting. Story you'll find details of on page 2. That sad story is also right there above the nameplate. Designer of Nigerian flag, Taiwo Akinwumi, dies at 84. Every time I recall any story about this man, that line in our first national anthem, I think, the labors of our heroes past
shall
never be in vain. With the second national anthem, the current one, the labors of our heroes past shall never be in vain. And a good number of people are wondering, did we significantly honor this man? Look, even if you say that he just put two colors together, hey, it is our national flag, national identity. Did we do enough for this man?
Well, I think he was presented with a national honor by former President Goodluck Jonathan. But how do you qualify enough? How much would be enough? What's the current state of things with Pa Akikumi? Does he have a decent home where he lives in? And he was a retired civil servant, I believe. Does he have a decent home? Do his children have the opportunities deserving of, an elder statesman in that ranking, in that capacity? These are the questions we should ask. And perhaps, also go a bit further, to check up on those issues and know that indeed that Pa Akikumi, is leaving behind a comfortable family.
Pa Akikumi, yeah. So, may your soul rest in peace. The Amen. Daily Times newspaper, that's it this morning, Malcolm.
Oh, yes, indeed. Very valid questions you've raised, and I think some answer has been given there. At least there is some comfort knowing that at least he got a national honor in his time, and we also see pictures of him with the former Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabo. And it does happen that, his work at least was recognized in his lifetime. I think that's some comfort. Now, whether it's enough, that's a different kettle of fish, but this is a little comforting that we didn't just remember, oh, he didn't get anything before he died. when he passed, at least there were pictures, pictures that we could say he had at least been given some honor in this land called Nigeria. Well, take a look at this next paper, New Telegraph. Subsidy removal. Marketers hit hard, turn to banks for rescue. That's a lead story right there. So it does appear that this deregulated market economy is not exactly favoring marketers of petroleum products. And it will be very interesting to hear from them what precisely is informing the difficulty. We know that the fact that a major government player, the NNPC, is still very much in the sector, and that some form of under-recovery is currently going on in a deregulated market, deregulated in quotes now, will not create a level playing field for all marketers in the market. So what precisely is the situation of marketers? Maybe they'll be willing to speak. The details are on pages 3 and 8. They have a number of riders. Owner of 40 fuel stations now operate only 7. Oil dealers threaten to sue NNPCL over failure to supply products. Bicycle dealers make brisk business as economy bites harder. Okay, so while some people are complaining, some of the people are cashing out. Fuel scarcity. No reason to panic, Ipman tells Nigerians. NNPCL, GCEO, Total Energies, and GMD meet. So you find details on pages 3 and 8 of the paper. Gabon coup. President Bongo seeks help as army takes power. Tinubu working with AU leaders on next line of action, says presidency, as Commonwealth says action of deep concern. Okay, you also have stories right on top of the nameplate. External debt projected to reach 32.4 trillion naira on exchange rate unification. And LCCI to Tinubu, remove regulatory obstacles for sustainable growth. Which ones are they referring to? You might find details on page 8 of the paper. And look at this, ecological funds. Reps query Great Green Wall's use of 81 billion naira for tree planting. The story is on pages 2 and 29 of the paper. 81 billion naira. I hope we have a wall, and I hope it looks great and green. That's the big story. I mean, that certainly should be a big, well, that will be for us journalists to help find out. I know we see, the occasional story from time to time about the process going on, but 81 billion, surely by now we must be seeing some sort of wall. And just in case you're wondering, this is an attempt to plant trees in the areas that have been affected by desertification in the north. It's a plan to do a great green wall by planting trees that are supposed to grow. But if we've expended 81 billion naira over a period, by now we should be seeing some trees, a forest at least. Okay? Well, let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
And turn to Malcolm, I was trying to take in 81 billion naira for trees. How much would you now spend on farming? Well, how much would you spend on nurturing the trees?
Well, by calculation, I just did a calculation now. 81 billion for 21 million trees. Comes to 3,857 naira per tree.
Well, I know you're the best mathematician amongst us.
No, calculator, please.
Even with a calculator, I doubt that I'll be able to arrive at that. But 81 billion naira is a life-changing sum. How much is the budget of some states in Nigeria?
Oh, wow.
Some are under 80 billion. 81 billion on trees. Well,
in 11 states.
In 11 states. Yes. Let's go to the next paper this morning. I wonder if you can take it in as I am trying to take it in. The Nigerian News Direct is what I have next for you. And the big story is on subsidy palliatives, Ogun. Oyo, Osun, others confirm receipt of 2 billion naira federal government funding as states roll out food aid to ease hardship. They're just two riders. Oyo governor declares support for local farmers during purchases. Kwara governor forms 12-person committee to oversee distribution. We've been also seeing, the distribution of palliatives in other states of the federation, particularly the northern part of the country. Well, but some pictures coming in from some states still leave much to be desired. What's going to one household looks like a ration for just a breakfast or an afternoon meal. Doesn't look like anything that can cushion the effect of subsidy removal on a household. So the question is, from the 5 billion naira rolled out to states, what's supposed to be the ration that should come to one household, and for what period of time? Those pictures are definitely not encouraging. Well, not in all cases, but in some cases. Let's look at other stories this morning as we go above the nameplate. There's Lagos Blue Line Rail commercial operations to commence on Monday. That's cheery to note, and we hope that it will also come at a subsidized rate to ease the hardship that Nigerians are currently going through. FG spent $1.17 billion on debt servicing in H1, that's quarter one, I believe, of first half of 2023. With the current economic realities, the sliding of the naira against the dollar, what's the current debt that Nigeria is owing, external debt to be precise, and what relief does this bring? We could go on and on about those questions, but I believe we'll have more of them for you this morning. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian News Direct.
Well, I'll be honest, I'm spoiled for choice of which paper to go with next. By the way, the Blue Rail, another newspaper says the costs have been slashed by 50%. Daily Trust newspaper has this on its front page: Gaboku, contagious autocracy spreading in Africa. That's according to the president. Murik warns Nigeria military against emulating Gabonese army. While we overthrew Bongo, according to Kuists. Coup deeply concerning. Scribe to Commonwealth. Make noise. I've been arrested. Bongo begs friends for help. And someone came out and said, when you altered the constitution, you didn't ask for help. So anyway, Gabonese celebrate fall of Bongo's 53-year dynasty. Find the details of that on page 4 of the paper.
I had cause to watch an interview with the deposed, would we call it deposed president of Gabon now, and he says term limits don't guarantee anything, and he in fact referred to the United States of America, where it's only the executive that has a term limit, but in the Senate, which is the most powerful institution, you have senators who have been serving for as long as 40 years, and that, after you've done 5 years or 10 years, the people don't listen to you anymore because they think that your term is almost expiring and you're on your way out. So that's inadequate for you to execute whatever vision that you have for your country.
Is his vision?
That came from the deposed president of Gabon.
Is it his vision or the national vision? That's another thing. And then please, even if term limits don't guarantee anything, give it to us. At least let's live with what we can, for now. But hey, that's that. That's the lead story. Right under the picture on the front page of the president and chairman of the Tolimi Foundation. 3 months after, websites of FCTA, Education, Justice retained Bello, Adamu, Malami as ministers. Trade, humanitarian, water, women ministries too. That is concerning. Is it the same for their Twitter handles and all other social media outreaches? That is very, very important. Well, one can guess whether or not it is something considered important by the people in charge. International investors, partners won't take us serious. That's ascribed to experts. Let's find the details of that story on page 5. Right under the nameplate, brain drain. Nigerian doctors earn $4,000 as wages in Gambia and Sierra Leone. Guess who said that? CMDs. Chief medical directors said that one. Reps fume as agencies spent 81 billion naira to plant 21 million trees in North. That's also right there on the front page, and several other stories that will most certainly take your fancy. Monthly revenue from Abuja Kaduna train service drops from 500 million to 1 million. That's according to the NRC. Stories on page 24. That's the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, and that's the much of the papers that we can take today. We're back right after now to take on the issues lined up for you today. Do stay with us.
You will agree with me that the fuel subsidy that was removed is actually in the best interest of Nigeria. He has said repeatedly that the pain of that removal will be felt temporarily before the smile, the positives of it will begin to be seen. And I'm sure, Your Excellency, the tiers of government, especially at the state level, are already beginning to feel that. Within a short time, so much money has been saved, and part of that money is already being sent to states so that the difficulties occasioned by the removal of the fuel subsidy is already being subsidized, so to say. Assorted grains have been sent to states, and we know that each state of Nigeria has received the sum of 5 billion naira in the first instance, and the FCT also got about 2 billion in the first instance. Now, Mr. President is aware that that is not enough, but is only the first necessary step that he has to take to ensure that this hardship occasioned by the fuel subsidy removal will be cushioned. Mr. President is desirous of changing the face of Nigeria. He's desirous of ensuring that the economic turnaround of this country is achieved within the shortest possible time. He's also desirous of ensuring that the image of Nigeria that has taken some bashing over the years be restored, and this ministry is in the forefront of that.
Well, finally, ministers have been appointed. They're taking their oath of office, and they've held their very first Federal Executive Council meeting. It was from that meeting, after the meeting, we heard from the coordinating Minister of the Economy and Minister of Finance that the president had listed an 8-point agenda which he wanted them to work with and run with. Food security, ending poverty, economic growth and job creation, access to capital, particularly consumer credit, improving security, improving the playing field on which people and particularly companies operate, rule of law, and fighting corruption. These are the key areas where the ministers have been asked to focus on. And all of this is coming against the backdrop of an economy that is currently struggling. We know that fuel subsidy has been taken out. Inflation is on the increase, and so many things are currently happening. And people are wondering, how do we expect the ministers? What are some of the key indicators that we'll be looking at here to know if the ministers are on track, excuse me, to deliver on the president's mandate of this 8-point agenda? Well, I have with me this morning two gentlemen. Mr. Anthony Ehilebo is a member of the People's Democratic Party, and Mr. Abu Andrew is a member of the APC and also a member of the Presidential Inauguration Committee 2023. Well, this is what your party, as I said, the government now being run by your party, has come up with, an 8-point agenda. And some people are saying, okay, we're looking at it. It doesn't look any different from what we've seen in the past. Precisely what is going to be new about this in terms of how they're going to be achieving this?
Yeah, so first off, I think the leadership matters a lot. We all know that the president is one who is a goal-getter, and like I always tell my friends, this is like the most difficult time for anybody to be a minister in Nigeria, you know, because they're going to really walk the talk, you know. And from every indication, the president has reeled out, you know, his 8-point agenda. And as ministers, you know, everybody must, in their respective ministry, key into, you know, this 8-point agenda. Yeah, we all know the situation we are in Nigeria today. And of course, it's obvious that it's going to be a very difficult job, you know, for the ministers. But once we have the right leadership, and, you know, I'm very optimistic that, you know, it is going to work, you know, for the good of Nigeria.
Well, Anthony, I'm sure you must be, you know, looking at things. You're not just a member of a political party. You're a man who has, let's say, sticks in Nigeria. You've got your businesses here, and I'm sure you're also taking a look at the political environment. You're also very invested in your state, Edo, where you come from as well. What are you hearing first from the communities up where you operate as to what precisely, how they're feeling the pinch of this economy, and perhaps if they have any, are they hopeful as to what exactly would come out of government?
Well, it's interesting that I think there's an acceptance of how bad things are. How did we get here? The APC government. 8 years. We have now considered that our low-cost years. And I remember actively coming to the studio and raising these issues that this is where we will end up. Unfortunately, it seems as if I'm back. It's like a deja vu. I'm back to the same rhetoric, back to the same conversation. And it doesn't seem as if we've learned our lessons. We're talking about severe poverty. We're talking about the hunger in the land. The way Amanadi's government started from the first day from Eagle Square, announcing removal of subsidy without a plan. There's an 8-point agenda which we don't even know the how. You know, we have to have leaders who are sympathetic to Nigerians. I'm using sympathy, not even empathy, because we're beyond empathy. We're beyond sympathy, right? Empathy right now. We're at sympathy. You have to really have pity for the people across the nation. There's nobody that is smiling today. And yet, we have a government that has appointed 43 ministers that doesn't look to me that they understand what is going on truly in Nigeria. Let me deviate a little bit. Yesterday, I saw the news about the coup in Gabon. And I recently went back to hosting spaces. So I needed to hear what Nigerians were saying. I must tell you, it took a lot of tact to guide that conversation through the 4 hours we had that conversation. The comments from Nigerians. I had a young lady from Katsina call in, and she literally said she's praying for a coup. I had to walk them back, like tell them that they had no experience of what the military does. Oh, but they said they didn't care anymore. And right now, they are ready for anything to liberate them from the suffering that they're going through. There was a video I saw of a young man who was eating, and there were a lot of Almanjeri children around. So they were waiting for him to eat. He was eating, and he had the bone and just a little bit of food left. And he stepped back. The way the children, it's on the internet. I wept watching that video. This is not the country that we all grew up dreaming to see in our future. And the question, sorry, Mark, but before you're done, and the question we want to ask is like, this is not even the time for us to even play opposition. This is the time for us to sit down and look the government in the face and say, listen, we're all in this situation together, but we need you to show us that you understand where we are at currently as a people. It is no longer time for brickbats. This is the time for everybody to say, look, it doesn't matter to us until when perhaps we get judgment from the courts. We have someone we see as the president, and we need him to lead by example, not appointing 43 ministers, not seeing them driving all over town in 10-car convoys, not seeing flashy cars, I mean, it doesn't represent the state of affairs of the country. It doesn't seem to me that they understand where they are. Perhaps, maybe we have a president that has lived his life in luxury for a very long time. He needs to step back. Maybe one day, enter a car that is unmarked and drive around the city center, not even go too far. Let him drive around some of the towns around Abuja. And then maybe he will get a sense of what really is going on. Because I have a sense that these guys are so protected, they have no idea of the reality on ground. Nigeria is sitting on a keg of gunpowder, Mark, I tell you, and it's no joke.
Well, Tony, some people will say we've been sitting on that keg of gunpowder for the longest of times. You know, I mean, this is not the first attempt.
We never bought petrol at 630 naira.
Perhaps
it's never happened in this country.
Just a moment. I don't think that we need to get to that point, because I remember, I mean, we all remember that there was a time when this is not the first attempt to remove fuel subsidy. It's always been a very, very touchy debate as to whether or not, you know, what's going to happen to the people when petrol subsidies are removed, what exactly should be the plan. You know, we've seen those kinds of conversations. We even saw a time when it was removed, but the government had to put it back. And even now, we see that, you know, petrol subsidy has been removed. We also know that right now it's not being completely removed, because even though we've been told that it is, you know, it's now around, is it 600 and what now we're buying in Abuja?
Yeah. Some places 640.
But we also know that right now marketers are complaining because not a number of them. So precisely, I mean, do you think that there is sufficient communication going on with the people, not just at the federal level now, also at the state level? Because we see that the president had a conversation with governors. First and foremost, he's had at least 2 conversations with them. The first one where he said that we have no excuse, we have to deliver. We sang for this job, we danced for it, etc. They had to do the work, they had to deliver. And then the second one where he actually gave, or will I say, declared some money for the state and grants and loans. And, you know, where we should actually, some people say where we should actually be focusing on is the state governments, because they are closer to the people and they have the mandate to also deliver to their people. So for you, do you think that there is sufficient communication going on at that level? Yes, we're in Abuja, we have a peculiar situation where we do not exactly have a governor in Abuja. But do you think that there is sufficient communication going on at that level?
Okay, so the fortunate thing for us in this government is the fact that the president is very outspoken and he's been speaking to the issues. And for me, that is what matters a whole lot. Yeah, so I agree that, you know, a whole lot is put on the shoulders of the federal government, you know, and little attention is paid to, you know, state governments. So state governors in respective states, I don't think they are putting out those information the way they should. They are not doing what they are doing the way the president is going about, you know, putting out the information and the difficulties we have in this country today. You know, for each time you listen to the president, he will always tell you, I feel your pains. I know what you are going through. I wish I had other means to sort this out, okay? I'll try as much as possible not to, you know, have back and forth, you know, trying to explain the challenges we are facing in this country today. But like you rightly said, you know, there are foundational issues, and it didn't just start from yesterday. We've been sitting on gunpowder forever, okay? So right now, I think what should matter to every Nigerian is, how do we get out of the woods, okay? We have a president that is speaking to the issues, that wants to solve the problem. Now, Nigerians, in a very reasonable percentage of, you know, numbers, have a belief that, you know, right, okay, maybe we should give a chance and see what can happen, okay? And unfortunately, the way the situation is, it is one that we cannot even, I mean, if the president has his way, he will not take out subsidy completely. But the point is, do we even have the means to even, you know, fund subsidy? We don't. And each time the president speaks, he speaks to those issues, you know. And for me, is it about the numbers of ministers we have? You know, really, how much? What are the amount of monies that goes into the expenditure? Nigeria, we need as many people that can solve the problem of this country today. You know, so for me, the numbers of ministers we have is not even the bane of the issue. The issue here is, how do we get people that can fix this country? You know, now, can I really start giving a scorecard to this government? I mean, it's a government. The ministers, I doubt if they are barely a week in office, you know, and a lot of them are still even meeting with the heads of agencies in their respective ministries and getting briefing and all of that. You know, so overall, I think we need to still latch on that hope that has kept us going, you know, and believe that something can happen. And for the young Nigerians that think that military is going to be better than a democratically elected government, I think we need a lot of work to do. And that is why the Minister of Information and Orientation Agency really has his work cut out for him. You know, there is a lot of disconnect. And the information, like you said, is not trickling down. A lot of people don't even know where we are at the moment, economically wise and otherwise. You know, there are a lot of challenges. So much that I'm sure government will not even say half of it, so that people don't even get traumatized and even get scared. You know, but do I believe that we can get out of the woods? Yes. Is it going to be now, or is it going to be in the next 2-3 years? Unfortunately, it might not be. But once we start getting it right, and, you know, a lot of things have been put in place, even from the administration that Anthony doesn't believe has done anything, or have thrown us even worse than where we're coming from. You know, but look, the truth is, if the 16 years before the coming of APC, a lot of things were gotten right, I don't think we'll be here today. Okay? Then also, we must also put into consideration the fact that what we're even experiencing is largely even a global issue. So you cannot separate those things from the internal crisis we also have. You know, so we need to communicate more, and I'm happy the president is doing that. We now have ministers that have hit the ground running, and they know, because if you don't work, Nigerians are going to shred you. You know, so you don't even have an option. And if you don't, and this minister, what is going to be different in this administration is the president is going to sack people, you know, and he has told them that much. So everybody must roll up their sleeves and get on working. And, you know, we need to get out of the wood as fast as possible. Nigerians are tired.
I think the question which Tony raised in terms of the ministers is not so much in terms of, you know, well, maybe the numbers is very important, but I think it's more about the cost of governance. For a number of people, they have raised issue with, you know, how bloated our cost of governance is, you know, the kinds of cars that we're still buying, in spite of the fact that we are in, you know, dire straits. Recently, the president had to intervene in the number of people who were going to hunger. That's the United Nations General Assembly. We've also seen criticism trailing governors who went to Kigali to go and do their retreat. You know, so people are wondering, okay, so times are really hard for us. Are we showing it? I mean, is government indicating it by the sort of, you know, by the sort of steps that it is taking to actually reduce the cost of governance? Are you convinced that government is showing that enough?
So I'm also happy that you mentioned, you know, the reduction of that. The president categorically stated that if you don't have any business in hunger, you don't have any business being there. Now that is a president that shows the will, you know, to reduce whatever, you know, expenses that is unnecessary. Okay. Now we also need to know that there should be a huge focus on the state. Whether we like it, I think in a very long period of time, a lot of Nigerians have concentrated too much on the center. You know, yes, we know that the state comes cap in hand at the end of every month, you know, for their monthly stipends or whatever, you know, but at the end of the day, the state, what are they doing? I know that the President Muhammadu Buhari, before he left office, had signed in a lot of things that have given, you know, the state the opportunity to, you know, carry out their own, a lot of things that was in the purview of the federal government had been moved to the state. So I'm hoping that a lot of the governors today will latch on all that, on all those opportunities and see how they can, do their best as well.
Is there an attempt to actually jumpstart the Nigerian economy through some of the purchases that government itself is making? We've seen a few states indicate that. I mean, we've seen a few states patronize, for instance, I mean, if we must buy cars, patronize local manufacturers. We're not seeing that same level of commitment at the federal level. Or have you noticed any such thing?
Well, ministers just came in. As a matter of fact, I've not seen any ministers' convoy. To be honest, I have not. I think the only SUV I had seen was when there was a story around the FCT minister buying an SUV for 300 million and all of that. I think that's the closest I've seen. Yeah. But I know that this president is going to encourage, local content and anything that would boost the economy of the country. And for me, I think Nigeria our population is huge. And the people that should get the job done should be a reasonable number. Okay, so I don't think it is an issue that we have 45 or 47 ministers as it stands. For me, what is more important is, can these guys get the job done? Can we put them on their toes to get this job done?
Do you agree, Tony? Because some people have also said, look, if we had a more structured structure, we would not need so many people. But in a situation where we do not have, and that we're also introducing new ministries, for instance, the Ministry of Blue Economy, Marine and Blue Economy, the Ministry of Youth has been separated from that of Sports because I think they need to be doing different things. Ministry of Mines is different from that of Steel Development. That if we're to manage them efficiently and we are to get the best of it, shouldn't we be having, one or two more people added to the cabinet to make sure that we get the most from this?
Okay, so I need to go back. I don't want to lose my train of thoughts because I needed to respond to the subsidy removal. I'll take a historical perspective, I'll take a current perspective and a future plan someone had. Historically, if you remember in 2012 what happened in Ojota, it was this same PDP government of 16 years he was talking about that tried to remove subsidy. At the time, the dollar price was manageable. At the time, if we had done that at that time, but do you remember the people who instigated that are in government today? Historically. So whatever you do comes to haunt you. That's where we are now. Let's talk about the way the subsidy was removed. I'm going to talk about Atiku Abubakar and his plan, Unity Sierra, where he planned that he was going to remove subsidy. But having been an experienced person in government, he proposed a subsidy be removed in phases. And before removing subsidy, providing solutions. I'll tell you what he had proposed. He had proposed $10 billion to go to SMEs and other cottage farms, other economic stimulating ventures. And he also proposed $20 billion to go to infrastructure development, to cater to all the fallbacks that would have been gotten from the removal of subsidy. You don't take food from a man and tell him, wait, let me find solutions for your hunger. It doesn't work that way. I wanted to clear that. Now let's come to cost of governance and the kind of government and signaling. Very important, signaling. You appoint 47 ministers. People are hungry back in the village. They don't care whether they are going to solve problems like this. And let's even talk about the 47 people that, I mean, for me, we've taken a history of Nigeria, and this was the same thing we complained about the Buhari government. You need to appoint people. I can only see, and I want to be fair to this government, I can only see 5 or 6 people in this present cabinet that are worth the salt on which they were appointed. Maybe Osun Tijani, Ali Pate, a few other eggheads, Wale Edu, perhaps. I'm not here. Like I said, we have to move this conversation from one that is more like we're attacking the government, because we're beyond that right now. We now need to actively assist whoever is heading this country with advice. The cost of running the National Assembly is 260 billion naira a year. Can we afford it? Nigeria currently is spending about 90% of our revenue, or 95 or so, repaying debts. Do we need an over-bloated service structure?
Not repaying it, servicing it.
Servicing it. Servicing it, right. Do we need an over-bloated government structure to deal with it? You see, when someone who really cares about his people is in government, he doesn't need people to tell people that he cares about them. The people know. Go to Tanzania. Go and see what the government there is doing. The new president that was elected. Or you want to talk about certain leaders in Africa. Look at what Kenya is doing. Look at the kind of growth Kenya is experiencing. Look at Rwanda. We may say that Rwanda has someone we call a tyrant, but he is the magnanimous tyrant or something they call him. But he's certainly driving the economy in the right direction. He's living and walking the talk. We don't see that in Nigeria. We see, you know...
Are you comparing the president who just came to power on the 29th of May with Rwanda's Paul Kagame?
You see the first actions, again, I talked about signaling. The first actions of any government signals to the people what it intends to do, how it intends to cut costs, how it is bearing the same pains. I mean, I wanted to see a president that would say to me, my ministers, I'm going to give you just one car. You need security, make sure the place is secure for as long as the people are secure, you will be secure. That's what we expected. I can start telling you things.
Are you being practical when you say
very pragmatic?
Okay.
Very pragmatic. You know how they say when you want the school to be good, you put your own children there?
We'll take a break now. We'll come back. You'll finish your thoughts, and my colleagues in Lagos will take over from there. We're still looking at the president's 8-point agenda, and I still have with me in the studio here Mr. Anthony Ahilebo and Mr. Abu Andrew. And they have two different perspectives on the matter. Well, Anthony, just before we went on break, you were trying to make your point about signaling.
Yes.
So you were saying that, you know, the signal has not been clear in terms of, you know, the cost of governance. What would you have loved to see?
I'd have loved to see a situation where the government wears the shoes of the people. We were talking just now about the convoy, the security provided for people in government. And I think someone said to me, do you mean a minister should go without police? And I asked, do you mean a normal citizen should go around without police escort? I mean, where does that happen? And I think that we forget that the citizens are more important than people that are appointed. If you cannot provide security for the average Nigerian, why do you have that security? What makes you more different than him? You are there to serve him. How can a servant be more protected than the person that he's serving? It doesn't make sense to me. It then tells you that there's a problem. And I think the only way to solve this problem is to put these guys in the shoes of Nigerians. We cannot have, I mean, I travel abroad.
This is something we've seen over the years, though. I mean, this is not something...
We've not seen the kind of cost of living over the years that we are seeing today.
The question is, this is something that we've provided for over the years, that, you know, when you become even a councillor, you have a policeman with you to provide some measure of security. You know, and on it goes. House of Reps member. Now, depending on the level that they're on, you know, also determine the level of security that we see around them. But this is something. Is that
normal?
That's sort of some sort of.
Is that normal?
I'm just asking. I'm just saying.
No, we cannot continue to accept what is abnormal. If you want to tell us that you are going to change the country, you are going to change things, by all means, change the way we do things. In a civilized country, and in a country that wants to develop, you do not have policemen and a retinue of security following government appointees.
And that should also be with the states that your party also...
Look, I don't spare any ox. There's no sacred cow when you're talking about Nigeria, when you're talking about how people really feel. I think that we are presumptuous. I think that we take it for granted what Nigerians are going through. We're just oblivious to it. I'm telling you, yesterday, the kind of conversations I heard from Nigeria, I think the president needs to have his ear. Forget about all those people who are surrounding him, who tell him things. He needs to listen to Nigerians. Nigerians are at their breaking point. the scenario we had 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it's not the same thing we have. The Buhari government has literally decimated Nigeria. Completely. It's not a joke. You're laughing. Take a trip to Kaduna, then you will stop laughing. It's not a joke. We're not playing anymore.
Does the APC recognize that? I mean, I think it's very important to ask. I mean, when we talk about what has happened in the last 8 years, and when the president talks about, these plans that he has, food security, ending poverty, and then you also hear the Minister of the Economy, coordinating Minister of the Economy, saying, we inherited an economy, a bad economy. I don't know how the APC as a party feels about that, because this is one, if it were another party that took over and they said that, the APC might say, well, it's because it was another political party. But when the people that have taken over are within the fold of the APC and they say things are really, really, really bad, how does the political party, members of the political, how do they feel about that?
So for me, as a member of APC, I'm prouder to be a member of the APC even right now, because what it means is that the APC as a party is not hiding the situation of what is on ground. And the government is coming out to tell us every day that the situation is bad, and nobody is papering over the situation that we have today. And that is why, the coordinating Minister of the Economy and Minister of Finance can come out to say that we inherited a very bad economy. Okay? Now, for me, yes, they have inherited a bad economy. And what is the next step? Fix it, which is what, led to this 8-point agenda we are discussing today. Okay? And I don't want to say it's still early in the day. Like I said, the ministers are even barely 1 week in office. And a few ministers have started even, reeling out their policy statements and all of that on how they need to move, And I will still tie the fact that our economy is largely tied around global economy. Unfortunately, we cannot run away from that fact.
Yeah, so while global economy might be a major thing to look at, when we say that the economy is bad, we know that there are some internal sabotage, that happened within the last 8 years. And people have been saying, look, we need to call people to account. Well, people need to be held responsible. People need to be asked some very serious questions. Are we asking questions of those who have brought us to this situation? Are we asking questions of, how the fuel subsidy regime went? Are we asking questions of how corruption was fought under the last administration? Are we asking, are these questions being asked seriously enough? So
for me, it is very fresh in my memory that the CBN governor is having issues. I mean, is responding to issues, with the security agents. Also, the EFCC chairman, that was there is also answering to issues. So for me, these are indication or indicators that, they are getting to the root of the issues. But right now, what should we be looking at as a government? We should be looking at how this country can take a leap from where it is at the moment, okay? And the fact still remains that it is not going to be overnight. It's going to be a gradual process. And I will keep appealing to Nigerians to keeping the faith and keep the hope, okay? We have a president that is very deliberate and a president that feels the pains of Nigerians and a president that knows what to do and will get it right.
Let me take this conversation to Lagos. I know my colleagues have questions. Okay.
Well, thank you, Marquette. Let me begin with Mr. Hilebo. Well, Marquette did ask you the other time about the fact that we're giving a lot of attention to the federal government, but indeed, true governance, which touches the people directly, happen at the state level. So it sounds to some may even think it's a lot of rabble-rousing, just mentioning the president and his cabinet, while in fact, true governance actually happens at the states level. The state governor, the commissioners, the ministries, departments, and agencies of every government at the states level, those are the places where true governance that directly touches the people actually happen. Speaking at that level, do you think there is enough conversation between the states and the federal government in the achievement of this 8-point agenda?
Thank you very much, Ayo. I need to quickly again go back to this. I think we are talking about the 8-point agenda, and at the last bottom bit of it, you have rule of law. And my brother here mentioned two poignant cases I'd like to point to in discussing the rule of law, right? So we're talking about the former chairman of the EFCC and the former governor of Central Bank. Have they been put through the normal process of the rule of law? The EFCC chairman has been in detention for close to a month plus now, or 2 months. That's the former chairman of EFCC. If you feel someone has committed an offense, again, it goes back to signaling. You need to signal from the beginning that you are going to be a government that will follow the rule of law. And all these actions do not tell us that the rule of law is anything to this government. But let's put that aside. Let's talk about the relationship between the federal and the state government. Calling them together and giving them 5 billion or 6 billion to go and share to their people does not seem to me like the right effort to make. Yes, the state governments have a responsibility to cater directly. The local government itself has the responsibility of providing direct impact and needs to the people. But the federal government has a lot to do with that. If you remember, the past government just signed the local government autonomy bill. We expect that this government puts its foot down and says, look, in implementation, we're going to make sure that allocations that are meant for local governments go directly to them from the FAC account, because that now is a law that has been passed. Now, that's one way to get that to work. The National Orientation Agency has a responsibility to devolve itself down to the state's orientation agencies to create awareness, civic awareness, on the responsibility of citizens, either to uphold the laws, hold government accountable, or themselves be accountable by paying their taxes and helping government to succeed where it needs to succeed. Now, this is a lot of work, and we expect that the people who are going to carry out these assignments have their head on their shoulders. Talking again about the ministers, you have people who are appointed as, Motawale was appointed as defense minister. Let me single him out. This is a man that left Zamfara state in the worst possible state that any governor can leave his state. And yet, you make him minister of defense. How does that sit with someone who wants to drive his security agenda on his 8-point agenda? You say you want food security. The food basket of the nation dwells largely within the northern part of Nigeria. We know what is happening there. If, as close back as 2-3 weeks ago, soldiers were killed in Niger State, which produces a lot of yam and a lot of farm produce for Nigeria, Benue itself, which used to be the food basket of the nation, does not seem to enjoy a level of security. How then can we tell people that we want to build a Nigeria that works for all of us? For me, it doesn't seem to me that we are taking the right steps. And we need this government to reflect and say, listen, I don't think, for me personally, I don't think that we've gotten a good start from this government. I think that we need to recalibrate even those that have been appointed. I honestly do not understand some of these appointments. These are people who have not delivered in the executive powers that they have been given before. So why then bring them before? Why not look for new hands, people who can think differently, who can think outside the box? Can someone tell me what Imatawale, who didn't perform in Zamfara in terms of security, is bringing to the table today?
Well, Mr. Anthony, it would seem like the ship has sailed on that because the president has already, inaugurated his team, and whether or not, there'll be more effective coordination, we'll see that in the short term rather than the long term, as the ministers have set to work already. Let me now come to you, Mr. Andrew Abu. In the same vein, the economy of the entire country is not just at the federal level, but is also in all the 36 states of the federation. And we've seen the increase, according to the acknowledgement of the federal government, the increase in allocation to the states. At the inaugural meeting, the Minister of Finance, spoke about inflation, about how this is not the time to borrow. So it would seem like going forward, the federal government is not going to be going up borrowing to fund projects. But how important is it also for that coordination to go through all the 36 states of the federation, such that states would not be going up borrowing to fund capital projects? What can the federal government do at that level to ensure that the states also abide by that, such that development, whether it's at the federal capital territory or the 36 states of the federation, development is going at the same pace?
So I think the good thing is, the president have started showing leadership by, appropriating $5 billion to each of the 36 states, including the FCT. Okay, and as it stands today, the president is engaging, with the governors, in their respective states, and what is the situation we are in today is not oblivious to, even the common Nigerian, let alone the governors. So everybody needs to, sit up and see how they can, contribute their own quota in, getting Nigerians out of the situation we are in. Now, do we have a lot of natural resources that can sustain this country? Yes, we do. I think the major challenge we have is the fact that these natural resources is not being tapped the way it should, because there are a lot of illegalities around those things. But I think part of the things that this government is, putting forward and looking forward to getting right is to put all those things into the right perspective, and to also ensure that we have, we do things differently and do things in a way that is going to benefit every Nigerian. So for me, governors, the government at the center, they've got a lot of work to do, and this is going to be done in cooperation with all level of government across board, federal to state and local government. Okay, so there's a whole lot to be done, and I'm of the firm belief that we are going to get it right, as we proceed in this administration.
Do you see, we're talking about signaling, do you see the possibility of politics not getting in the way, such that the federal government can prevail on the state governors not to wield their influence? Because Kaduna is still fresh in our minds. They presented a loan, the former governor presented a loan request that was not approved during his first term, but was represented and approved during his second term. While that has sailed through, but do you see that, the tone of politics in this current dispensation will prevent a reoccurrence of that kind of scenario, particularly where it has to do with, aligning with the Fiscal Responsibility Act and other concerns where a loan is not particularly needed, where the state can generate revenue on its own?
Yeah, unfortunately, we cannot take away politics from, governance in this country, because it's not as if we have all governors members of APC. I was reading a post yesterday where the Minister of Works His Excellency David Umahi was telling the governor of Edo State, Obaseki, not to play politics, with the lives of the people, So, yeah, so we're already even seeing all that, in this fresh administration. So I think it behoves on everybody, all the key actors, to understand that as it stands today, the federal government needs the cooperation of all the states, to implement and achieve all that they have reeled out, in the 8-point agenda, and it's not rocket science. It's going to take a lot of engagement, and talking and engaging the people as well, to see how we can move forward. But I'm positive that things will change for the better, and the politics should reduce to its barest minimum, so that at least we can get it right.
Well, that is the expectation. Let me come to you now, Mr. Ihilebo. The unemployment figures have generated quite some debate. The new unemployment, calculation has generated quite some debate. How is that going to impact on funding allocation for that sector in terms of job creation? If this rebasing puts Nigeria at 4%, how realistic is it?
Well, if unemployment is at 4%, there's no more work to do. We can all go home. It means that everything is okay. If we shouldn't even be having this conversation if our unemployment is at 4%. You're saying the average Nigerian earns per hour, maybe an average of 180 naira. And in comparison, while the Statistician General, former Statistician Yemi Kale, admits that the template used is what internationally accepted, but it's not an ILO standard accepted practice for Nigeria, particularly, because we have to put it into context. When you say someone who lives abroad earns, the minimum wage in the United Kingdom is £9.30. £9.30 is about 9,000 or about 10,000 naira. How do you compare that with someone who earns 183 naira per hour in Nigeria? I mean, it's a huge disparity. And when you say cooking up figures of forgery, again, it goes to signaling. It goes to telling you that this government may not do so well if it doesn't come out to tell the truth and present figures as they are, so that we know where to go.
Okay.
We, particularly members of the PDP, have been quite restrained in jumping at this government because we wanted to see what direction they were going. I really want to stick to this 8-point agenda that they've put out because, for me, it doesn't define a clear pathway. We talked about how you just mentioned the states. I'll come back to this, your unemployment figures. But something that I want to talk about is how the hands of states are tied behind their backs, and how we expect that this government sees how to free up, using the legislative framework and restructuring, to free up resources for these states so that states can start to generate resources where their hands are tied. Things like mining, things like independent power generation, which have recently laws have been passed to allow for states to do this. I want to see this government drive action towards increasing production capacity for states.
Yeah.
Increasing, now there are certain things that the government has an overhead. When he mentioned the Minister of Works, I'm from Edo State. If you travel from Abuja and you get to Edo State, I can tell you where the bottleneck starts. You start from Auchi, just after Okpila. You have one huge section of the road that is so terrible. You get into Ewu, it's a terrible place. You get into Ekuma, it's terrible. You're going to Saple, leaving Edo State from Saple Road, it's terrible. But these roads are all federal government roads. And the state is not allowed to intervene in this road. Even when the state government mobilizes to go and do some level of maintenance work there, the federal government's agencies step in and stop them and tell them these contracts have been awarded to people. Now, we need to find a midway to saying, look, if state governments have the capacity to handle these things, why not allow them to handle it where we agree on a base cost for them to do it.
I think that would speak to the collaboration that we began with the other time. I'm aware, I think it was so far, I think Lagos State has been able to do that successfully, take on federal projects, and they were reimbursed, unless I'm getting my facts wrong. And I think River State also attempted something like that. But I'm glad that you wanted us to talk about the 8-point agenda of the president. Let's take the first two. Earlier in the year, earlier in the administration, the president talked about food security and announced certain things. And there is this African proverb that if you take out poverty, if you take out food out of the problem, you've significantly dealt, with poverty. So in terms of food security, it will not be able to happen without that collaboration. The agricultural activities are going to happen at the state level, all over the nation. You are well aware there's hardly a state in Nigeria that you will not be able to throw something on the ground and it will germinate, it will produce, and all of those things. Even though each state or each region of the country have their specialties in terms of what they can produce agriculturally. So in terms of collaboration in that regard, what do you want to happen that will demonstrate that not just the federal government, but the states themselves have their hands on the plow to ensure that our people are food secure?
Okay, so let me take this using the agricultural value chain. You can't have food security if you have insecurity. It's not possible. So the first thing we need to look at is why we have a high level of insecurity, government's approach to providing security across the northern region now. You do not have, people cannot go to their farms. It's impossible, almost impossible for you to have that value chain activated. Now, there's so much the state government can do in terms of, yes, getting the farmers to get cooperatives, giving them land, giving them C of O or titles to that land. I want to use my state as a reference. Edo State applied for an agricultural facility. In fact, the Commissioner of Agriculture is from my local government. And I sat down with him like 2-3 weeks ago, and he started enunciating the problems. That perhaps because the governor had an issue with the former governor of Central Bank, the loan that was disbursed to other states were not sent to him. Now, in my mind, I sat back for a minute and thought, did this person who stopped that loan think of the bigger picture? That it is beyond the skirmish between one individual and another individual, that it goes to the heart of the matter. Food is essential to the people. So moving forward, like I said, we're here to provide solutions. We want to see the government at the federal level take responsibility, because a critical infrastructure, like I said, this 8-point agenda to me does not seem well thought through. And again, this government did not engage Nigerians on what it wanted to do. Perhaps I might give them a few ideas from the Unity Sphere approach that the PDP had wanted to implement should it had gotten the job to lead Nigeria. You see, facing critical infrastructure, the PDP proposed to provide $20 billion first before anything, so that even if you produce this food, just say the state governments do all the work of producing the food, how do they evacuate it? We don't have the infrastructure to move, because your food production and your earning must have a parity point. So you must be able to produce this food and take it to where it is paid for the best. And sometimes not just take it in its raw form, process it. Something like cocoa, something like the coffee bean seeds that do very well in Adamawa State. How do they move these products from Adamawa to where perhaps the production is? So there are certain things that the federal government only has the capacity to do. State governments cannot provide interstate rail, cannot provide for the maintenance of the federal highways if we say we want to take them by road from probably Adamawa to Lagos, where they are shipped abroad. Now, the federal government has to think about incentives for people to come and site industries, localized industries, where this agricultural produces can be taken directly from the farms to processing and shipped abroad at premium price, so that the farmers, the end people who produce these things, earn a substantial living and are encouraged to continue in this line. I am one of the I used to be one of those that own one of the farms that are considered farming communities across Nigeria. We've shut down the farm because of insecurity. How do we go back to that? So I'm speaking as someone who is affected by it. So,
all right. Well, we're already in our closing moments now. I don't think that Andrew, can you, fault what he said in terms of how the states, yes, need to be involved in agriculture, but, there is a big role there for the federal government. Do you have any disagreement with it?
No, I don't. So I agree that, the state has to be, because of course, all the lands that will be used for such purposes will be provided by states, But you see, I need us to correct an impression, because most times when we speak like this, we sell the country short or we sell it high. Now, when we talk about insecurity in the farms, or farmers can't farm because of insecurity, when we make those kind of statements like we make a blanket statement as if insecurity has taken over. I mean, we still have, even from the north, we still have produce come from the north, you get to the south. So let us not make a blanket statement when we talk about insecurity, because the investors we are even proposing should come to Nigeria to invest will even be scared, So I need us to clear that.
Yeah, but how do we talk about it without, without papering over cracks? How do we speak? Because it is a major concern.
So we agree that there is insecurity. But you see, when we talk about insecurity and we sound like it has ravaged the country, no farmer can go to farm and all of that. No, it hasn't. Okay.
My farm is in Abuja. So let us go to my farm in Abuja. My farm is in Kubwa, Abuja. I cannot go to that farm in Kubwa, Abuja.
That's because
the bandits are in Beningwari, and Beningwari is not less than 30 minutes from that Kubwa farm.
So for me,
what are you talking about?
So for me, okay, we went through a 6-month hard campaigns, and I'm tired. I'm mentally and physically tired from the back and forth.
Imagine how Nigerians feel.
The back and forth on how, things are not working. For me, right now, my concentration will be how can this government succeed? What are the solutions we can proffer for this government to succeed? Because at the end of the day, what happens to A happens to B.
Square pegs and
so at the end of the day,
the Minister of Defense, look at it.
You can. Matawale you are talking about is not the Minister of Defense. He's just a State Minister of Defense, Badaru. And these guys, they are governors. These are chief security officers
how well did their states
in their states at some point.
How well did their
just
states
very
fare?
recently. So for me, I think it's too early in the day to start even criticizing any minister that has been given a job under this administration.
I said the same thing.
Okay, so let's wait for another 8 years. Then we can now do all this. So, but we need to also recognize the fact that we have a new man on the job, and if there is anything we should pray and be convinced about, is that he will get the job done.
You have to be honest to him.
Well, we'll see how they eventually fare. We'll be given maybe we have a job to do on a daily basis. I mean, as these policies come out, we have a duty to interrogate them and see how it is that they're going to be working. But we have to thank you, gentlemen. Maybe very soon we'll be bringing you back to see if there's progress or not, according to your own assessment. Thank you so much for coming on this morning. Anthony Ahilebo is a member of the People's Democratic Party, and Abu Andrew is also a member of the All Progressives Congress and member Presidential Inauguration Committee 2023. Thank you once more for coming on.
Thank you.
We'll take a break at this moment, and then we'll drill down to the states. How is this being translated at the level of the states? In just a moment, please stay with us.
Thank you so much for staying with us. Professor Kenneth Amechi joins us this morning. He's Chair, Sustainable Finance, European University Institute, Florence. He is also Chief Economic Advisor to the Imo State government. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Prof. Well, I'm sure you've listened to a little bit of the conversations that we have had this morning. And as Markwell raised the issue earlier, how do we integrate this whole idea of the federal government at the state level? Perhaps we want to begin first with what challenges do you think people need to be aware of that a state government, Imo State government, for instance, has that could be slowing down development that people need to be aware of?
Okay, good morning, and thank you for having me. Just permit me to go back a bit before I situate it or contextualize it within the Imo State environment. So what this 8-point agenda is actually talking about is the Sustainable Development Goals. But we haven't framed it like that. I know we say, well, it's nothing new, it's nothing spectacular in that sense, but the creativity of it lies in the fact that it links or they link back to the Sustainable Development Goals. And for that to work well, I want to argue that we need to have a comprehensive understanding of sustainability. We also need to have sustainability thinking in practice, in action, because that's one way to make it work. Otherwise, it will keep hanging. And when it comes to the implementation of sustainability or the Sustainable Development Goals, we also need to recognize the interdependencies. So there's a link between food security and poverty. There's a link between insecurity and unemployment. So if you're a minister and you're charged with these different aspects of the development goals, you also need to find a way of talking to each other. I think it's been said that the implementation is key. I agree with that, but that implementation can also be encumbered, especially if the ministers are not on the same page with the senators, or they're not on the same page with members of House of Rep, or even the civil service. So how do you carry the civil service along? Because when it comes to sustainability and sustainability thinking, we need to ensure that it's well embedded in the system, and that's where socialization matters. And going back to your point about the states, I would argue that the federal government needs to have a proper handshake with the states, because even if you're talking about investment will need to be localized. So they need to come into states, and some of these policies or agenda that are being set will need to find spaces within states to function.
Well, the third...
So going back to your question about Imo State, I would argue that unemployment is one of the critical things that His Excellency Senator Hope Uzodinma is working hard on through his 3R agenda. The 3R are reconstruction, rehabilitation, and recovery. So rehabilitation is about empowering our people, and that way we're able to deal with the problems of unemployment.
Well, Prof, job creation happens at the states. Economic growth for the nation will reflect in the states. So it goes back to, the issues that you raised, the other time about, what the state government has to encounter and all of those things. You've identified job creation as a critical challenge. So how do we deal with it? What does the federal government have to say or do? You said that there needs to be a proper handshake between the federal government and the state government. So far, what is lacking? The federal government has rolled out some initiatives, especially in the agricultural sector, that is expected to provide some jobs. What is lacking at this current moment?
We can see the handshake happening in different instances, but I think we need to do much more. But coming specifically to the case of Imo State, I'll argue that the governor started by creating an industrial policy, which was launched back in November 2022, which is primarily based on sustainability and sustainability thinking. Because, what he's talked about as the 8-point agenda, as I mentioned, is all about the Sustainable Development Goals. So if you look at Imo State's industrial policy today, is fundamentally based on the principles of sustainability. And beyond that, we are also thinking about the industrial policy meeting Imo State where Imo State is. So it's all about job creation. So we're looking for investors that are also hungry and passionate about making profits in ways that contribute to job creation. The governor also has launched the initiative, which is on digital skills, and he's committed to training about 300,000 Imo youths over a 3-year period. So imagine a situation whereby some youths in Imo State can stay in Owerri or any part of Imo State and work for companies abroad because they have the digital skills that will enable those jobs to be outsourced to people in Imo State. It might not even be people from, organizations that are based abroad, but think about Lagos, for example. People in Lagos or companies in Lagos or Abuja or Port Harcourt can outsource some of their jobs to people in Imo State. And as you agree with me, the cost of living is, of course, cheaper in Imo State compared to somebody working in Lagos or further afield. So, and that way also, Imo State has a lot of graduates, because you may wonder and ask, why do we have high unemployment? We have become, our success in a way has become our problem, because Imo State has a lot of graduates, and Imo State can't absorb all these graduates. So they migrate to Lagos or to Abuja or wherever they can find greener pastures. But the idea here is also to think about how we can retain these young people in Imo State, and in that way enhance the value retention. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, the state is also pursuing an agenda we call the One Kindred, One Business Initiative. It's called OKOBI, O-K-O-B-I, One Kindred, One Business Initiative. So when we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals and the need to create jobs, we also need to speak to, we need to find a way to domesticate and indigenize that thinking. And that's what we are doing in Imo State.
But
because if you look...
Pardon me, Mr. Professor Meshi, beyond Imo State, let's look at it on a larger scale. And I refer to the president's broadcast of last month, where he promised 75 billion naira credit to big businesses, and some amount also, I can't immediately recall now, to nano businesses. Now that the Federal Executive Council has been inaugurated, they've had their inaugural meeting, and we've also seen the promise of 50 million jobs, but the question always is, where is the how? There is the promises, but what's the how? What's the implementation plan? What level of coordination do you expect to see with the ministers and the governors, such that that plan for the transformation of the economy as promised by the federal government will be implemented?
That's a very good question. And it's going back to the point I was trying to make. If you look at the recent report, that is the National Bureau of Statistics report, it says that 75% of the employment recorded is in the informal sector and the agricultural sector. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the Nigerian economy is about 75% informal, and also based on agrarian characteristics. So if you put it that way, then the question is, how can the different states speak to that informality? And that's exactly what we're doing in Imo State. Sorry, I'm going back to Imo State because it gives me the opportunity to concretize the response you're looking for. So what we are doing in Imo State then is to ensure that we indigenize. So using our Umunna system, the Igbo community is made up of Umunna, that is kindred. And how can those kindreds be transformed to economic productive units? And that way we are able to bring down the rhetoric from, up high there to the everyday reality that people face. Jobs are about individuals. Individuals exist in families, individuals exist in kindreds, and therefore we need to meet them where they are. Otherwise, we talk about policies that are hanging out there, and they don't have mechanisms to be translated to the way that it meets people where they are. And that's exactly what we are doing in Imo State. So the conceptualization is great, and we talked about implementation, but we need to meet people where they are. And the One Kindred, One Business Initiative, championed by the Imo State government under the leadership of Governor Hope Uzodinma, I think is one way of showcasing that some of these practices can really be implemented.
Beyond Imo State, you talked about the need for a handshake between the federal government and the governors. What level of coordination do you expect to see between the relevant ministries? For instance, the Ministry of Trade and Investment, the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, and the Ministry of Labor and Employment. What kind of engagement do you expect to see between the ministers leading these ministries and the state governors, such that that plan for transformation will be executed successfully?
I would say one way to go about it is to bring the states on board to talk about their peculiarities. Imo State is not the same as Edo State. Imo State is not the same as Sokoto State. So these states understand their needs more than somebody who is out there in Abuja making policies. And the other point I try to emphasize is the issue of indigenization, customization. Let us translate these principles and theories or frameworks to meet people where they are. I keep using that phrase, meeting people where they are, because each state is different. And say, for example, there was a time the federal government pursued the one local government, one product. Okay, why didn't it work? A product is not necessarily a business. Therefore, if I say I produce cashew nuts, it might be a product for my local government, but how then can that be converted to a business, and so that product becomes part of the value chain, either for local production or global production?
Well, Prof, doesn't that also now, my apologies, doesn't that also raise the question of collaboration among the regions? I mean, you said it's important for us to meet people where they are. The states are in the regions. There are those who have suggested that the states should form themselves into economic hubs. So the Saudis, for instance, will make itself an economic hub, focus on a particular thing for the Nigerian economy. The Northeast will do the same. The Middle Belt, the North Central would do the same, create themselves into economic hub. Do you think that is something that should be considered and championed, especially by the governors in the Nigerian Governors Forum?
That's a brilliant point, and I encourage them to do so. But it's not a top-down approach. It's something, again, that the different states and regions will need to come together and think in ways that work for them. When we constructed or came up with the Imo State industrialization policy, it considered those sectors that will link Imo State with the rest of the Southeast. Because Imo State is at the heart, and call it the Eastern Heartland, of course, but it is very much central to the southeastern states. So we looked at those sectors that can connect with Abia State, maybe Aba, or can connect with Nnewi in Anambra, or with Ebonyi, or with Enugu. So that way also we are thinking, having that kind of regional approach in the thinking. So it's not just about Imo State, but it's about Imo State and other states. But I agree with you that the other states and governors need to come together in ways that will create this kind of bottom-up approach as opposed to always trying to mimic what is happening at the federal level.
Well, it makes a world of sense. I mean, coming from a professor of sustainable growth or sustainable development, or professor of sustainability, it's only understandable that you'll be speaking in that same vein. So it is most appreciated. Thank you so much for your time this morning and for your thoughts. And wish Nigeria the best. Professor Kenneth Amechi is Chair, Sustainable Finance, European University Institute, Florence. He is also Chief Economic Advisor to the Imo State government. Thank you again for your time, Prof.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. So your own messages, your contribution to this program. And next, Audu Ilya, yours is the one we are taking first. He says in a tweet, currently, what we are experiencing is not leadership by example. Mr. Anthony is making a lot of sense, demanding the leaders live in the same conditions we are in, walk the streets, use the public hospitals, schools, power supply, and so on, like the average Nigerian.
This is an interesting one, Ayo, from Oshinawa Kinsley, and he says, the 8-point agenda is an old lullaby that has been sung to us from ages, I believe. The government should tell us in specific terms how these agenda will be achieved in the process of time. We're tired of words and promises. We demand measurable results via pragmatic processes. We hear you, Kinsley.
One is from Jumai Sarki saying, I'm always pained to see people speak negativity to an administration that is barely 3 months old. The situation in the country is bad, but this is a function of previous administrations. Contributions from the opposition can be more constructive and civil. Let us give this administration a chance. Well, benefit of the doubt is what this person is actually pushing for. But we thank you for your contributions to the program this morning. Thank you so much for being a part of it. We don't take it for granted at all. And I don't know why today feels like a Friday, though. Maybe because some people will not be at work tomorrow. Yeah, it's time to take a break. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you when I see you. I'm Malkwe Ogunyuso.
Yes, thank you, Malkwe, for warning me. I hear you. And thank you for watching the program this morning. We will be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, Peter Drucker is a management expert. He said, the most important thing in communication is to hear what is not being said. We do not hear. We hear what you're not saying, Malkwe. Have a wonderful rest of your day and all the best towards Nigeria. I'm Ayo Makinde.